So hello and welcome to this NPTEL course entitled 20th Century Fiction, where we are looking at and studying Sadat Hasan Manto's short story Toba Tek Singh. We have already begun with the story, so we'll just move on and look at the text in some close details. So as a matter of discussion in the beginning, we talked about how the madhouse in Lahore OAA becomes a very symbolic space, in the sense that the questions that the madmen begin to ask about the partition, the seemingly irrational questions, the seemingly nonsensical question and answers that go on inside the madhouse, where they seem to actually reflect, or be reflective rather, on the bigger irrationality, the bigger madness of partition, which was engineered and bureaucratized by the leaders, by the policymakers, etc. So in a way it becomes a critique of partition delivered by madmen, and the madmen's critique in Toba Tek Singh, this short story, becomes a very potent critique, a very compelling critique in some sense. So we'll look at the various figures in Toba Tek Singh, and also the questions that are asked, and the seemingly random and nonsensical responses which are produced out of the questions. Like, what if India goes away and becomes Pakistan? If Pakistan goes away and becomes India? What if both countries go away and become some other country? Now, all these questions and discussions, which obviously they seem irrational and superfluous and senseless, in a sense, they are actually very, very fundamental questions about the whole artificial quality of nation formation. How is a nation formed? What are the boundaries of a nation? How porous are the boundaries? How fixed are the boundaries of any particular nation? So Toba Tek Singh, the short story, is a madman's critique of the constructed quality of nation formation. It's a madman's critique of the artificial engineered quality of nation formation, and how nation formation is always a process which is artificial, material, ideological. It's invested in so many different ways. But it seems to be a seamless thing. So the entire sacrality of the nation formation is being questioned by madmen in Toba Tek Singh. Like I said, the madmen's presence, or the mad quality of the questions, the senseless, the insane quality, the irrational quality of the questions, paradoxically produce more potent questions, a more potent critique of the madness of partition in the first place. So there's this bigger madness out there against which this micro madness, or the micro madmen, they have no agency, they have no voice. So there are two kinds of madness, two dimensions of madness, as it were, in Toba Tek Singh. The outside madness of partition, which took away the lives of millions of people, which dislocated millions of people, and which obviously created huge trauma in the minds of so many people in the subcontinent. That madness, is now obviously a rational thing. That madness is now sort of frozen into a formative thing, a formed thing, a fully formed thing, in the sense of two nations. So now the madness is now in the asylum, but then we are also told in some sense how this is a lesser madness, a more innocuous madness compared to the bigger, more sinister madness, which was partition. So we come to the central character in Toba Tek Singh, which is a person called Bishen Singh, but we also see how the Anglo-Indians in this particular madhouse now, they begin to feel anxious, because they now are told that the British have gone away, partition has happened, so obviously they are no longer in a prestigious position or in a position of prestige. So the Anglo-Indians will now fall in grace, and they begin to conspire with each other. They begin to sort of talk to each other and discuss what is going to happen to the quality of the breakfast. So again, the fact that they're focusing on the quality of the breakfast would seem irrational to us, would seem, or might seem mad and funny to us, but then that's also very symbolic, because the quality of breakfast for Anglo-Indians, fearing that that's going to deteriorate, is obviously a symbolic projection of fear, that the quality of their lives might deteriorate, the quality, the standard of living might deteriorate, the social status might deteriorate after the British go away, which is what exactly and historically happened. So there are two Anglo-Indians, we are told, this should be on the screen. There were two Anglo-Indians in the European ward. When informed the British were leaving, they spent hours together discussing the problems they would be faced with. Would the European ward be abolished? Would they get breakfast instead of bread? Would they have to make do with the measly Indian chapati? So again, the difference in bread and chapati is projected, is sort of obviously becomes big and substantial in these madmen's minds. But like you said, this is very symbolic. So the fact that they will quote unquote degrade into chapatis would obviously be a reflection of the degradation of their social status, of the social prestige. And now we come to the protagonist in Toba Tek Singh, the story. There was a Sikh who had been admitted into the asylum 15 years ago. Whenever he spoke, it was the same mysterious gibberish. And what's the gibberish? Upar the Gurgur, the Annex, the Bayad, Hayana, the Mung, the Dal of the Lal time. Now, that's the Punjabi sentence. What it basically translates into is that the quality of dal, mung dal, has deteriorated, it's fallen substantially, and the gods up above do nothing about it. That's what it roughly translates into. Now again, this is a madman's gibberish, which is obviously the case, but then if you read into it, we find that it's possible to look at it as some kind of a political statement, some kind of a madman's comment on what's happening outside, or what's happening at a daily level. The quality of dal is deteriorating, which is to say, the quality of consumption, the quality of food, the quality of nourishment, the quality of life is deteriorating. And the gods up above are completely indifferent to it. So there is this God up above, or gods up above, which obviously, it can be read as a commentary of the political powerhouses or the political gods controlling the fates of millions of people, whose dal is deteriorating every single day, whose dal is falling and standing every single day. So a dal here, like the Anglo-Indians chapati and bread, it becomes quite symbolic. It becomes symbolic of a fallen standard in terms of what's going to happen when the British go away, and what's going to happen now. The India and Pakistan are two different countries. Certainly two different nations have been formed. So what's going to happen to the dal? What's going to happen to the bread? What's going to happen to the chapatis? Now these are very micro questions. These are mundane questions. These are insane, irrational questions. But in a context, in a political context in which these questions are asked, they suddenly become very meaningful, very, very compellingly and insightfully meaningful, or penetratingly meaningful, and that becomes an interesting quality over here. So the guard said that he had not slept a wink in all this time. For 15 years, no one has ever seen him sleep. He would not even lie down to rest. His feet were swollen with constant standing, and his calves had puffed out in the middle. And in spite of his agony, he never cared to lie down. So he's someone who's obviously very, very anxious. He's probably living some trauma. He hasn't slept in 15 years. No one has ever seen him sit down, forget about sleeping, and as a result of which his feet have become swollen and his calf has become huge. Now, it's possible again to read this body of this madman as some kind of a body of trauma, a body of violence, violence done on the body. It's like accumulated time. It's not like normal time. It's time which is obviously one which is diseased in quality. And when that diseased time enters the body, this is what happens to the body. Your body becomes restless. The body becomes swollen. The body becomes injured. The body becomes pathological or pathologized in some sense. Okay, in spite of his agony, he never cared to lie down. He listened with rapt attention to all discussions about exchanges of lunatics between India and Pakistan. So again, this is a common conversation in the asylum now. Everyone's talking about the exchange of lunatics in India and Pakistan. People are saying, well, if you're a Muslim, you go to Pakistan. If you're Hindu, you go to India. That's how it has been decided, almost mathematically speaking. So obviously we talked about how there's no agency. No one's asking the madman where they would want to go. And obviously, these are, you can read this in even current political context across the world, that people who are actually suffering are not really asked in terms of what they want. The political powerhouses in certain centers are deciding the fate for them, and that's something which we can see here as well, in very grotesque details. Okay, if someone had asked his views on the subject, he would reply in a grave tone. Upar de Gurgur, the Annex Baya Dhayana, the Mung Dal of the government of Pakistan. So again, there's something alluding to the government of Pakistan, a reference, a mysterious cryptic reference to the government of Pakistan, which is connected to the quality, the fallen quality of the dal, Mung Dal. But later on, it started substituting the government of Pakistan with Toba Tek Singh. And this is the first time we hear the word or phrase Toba Tek Singh, which is, we are told, was his hometown. Right, and this now becomes a very symbolic space in the story, the Toba Tek Singh, the village from which this person is from. And he wants, the key question that he's going to ask everyone from this point is that, and I want to go back to Toba Tek Singh. I don't want to go to Pakistan, I don't want to go to India, I reject the decision taken for me on my behalf on the basis of my political, of my religious identity, and I want to go to my own village, my native village, Toba Tek Singh. Do I have the choice? Do I have the option, the agency to do it? Of course, it doesn't, and that's the tragedy in the story, that it doesn't have the agency to go back to Toba Tek Singh, which is his native village, which is his place of birth. So again, this is about choicelessness or agency-lessness. So how is madness equated with agency-lessness? So we see in the story how madness becomes, in a sense, in a very perverse, paradoxical sense, the only possibility of agency in this particular context. The only possibility of agency is available through madness, because of madness, because madness will give you some license to say things that you're otherwise forbidden to say. Now he began asking where the Toba Tek Singh was to go, but nobody seemed to know where it was. Those who tried to explain themselves got bogged down in another enigma. Sialkot, which used to be in India, was now in Pakistan. At this rate, it seemed as if Lahore, which is now in Pakistan, would slide over to India, and perhaps the whole of India might become Pakistan. It was also confusing. And who could say if both India and Pakistan might not entirely disappear from the face of the earth one day? So now that the constructed quality of borders, border making and unmaking are in play, everyone's fearing that if borders can be created randomly, they can also be uncreated, they can also be recreated. So Sialkot, which was India, is now seems to be in Pakistan. Now everyone's convinced that Lahore, which is in Pakistan, might slide over to India at some point in time. And there's other speculation, more wild speculation, which is saying, well, what if India and Pakistan both disappear from the face of the earth and we have like a different landmass altogether? So everything is possible. So now with this creation, co-creation, recreation of borders that is happening so randomly, it's a random recreation of so many borders happening across the cities, across 2 different countries, people are asking all kinds of questions, all kinds of irrational but possible questions. And again, this is the other key thing I want to emphasize a little bit, the equation between irrationality and possibility. Now what appears irrational, what seems irrational, the question that madmen are asking, is actually paradoxically a possibility. Now they're saying that if India and Pakistan are formed suddenly without any consent or any decision taken by the people who live there, who is to decide, who is to say, who is to confirm that tomorrow the different landmass might not appear or just take a different name suddenly? We're not sure of that. That is perfectly possible. Okay, and that's the conversation, that's the discourse going on in the asylum now. So the asylum becomes, as you can see, a very charged political space, a very symbolic space here in the context of the story. The hair on the symptomatic's head had thinned and his beard had matted, making him look wild and ferocious. But he was a harmless creature. In 15 years, he had not even once had a row with anyone. The older employees for the asylum knew that he had been a well-to-do fellow who had owned considerable land in Toba Tek Singh. So he was some kind of a feudal person. He was a gentry perhaps. He owned some land in Toba Tek Singh. The older guards knew him because he had been here for many years, 15 years now. So he's recognizable by everyone, recognized by everyone. Then he had suddenly gone mad. His family had brought him to the asylum in chains and left him there. So again, this was the typical way the madmen were handled back then in Europe and also in other parts of the world. They were chained, they were coerced. There was this physical, corporeal coercion done on them. So they were chained, they were made to sometimes parade in the cities in chains, and people would just look at them as a spectacle of irrationality. So he was brought in chains to the asylum over here and just left him there. So he was abandoned by the family and was left in this asylum. They came to meet him once a month, but never since the communal riots had begun. But ever since the communal riots had begun, his relatives had stopped visiting him. So again, the whole idea of the relatives stopping to come becomes important here as well. Because, the communal riots, they interrupt the visit of the relatives. They interrupt the coming of the relatives away. Yeah, that obviously becomes, that compounds his crisis, this compounds his anxiety to a large extent. His name was Bilshen Singh, but everyone called him Toba Tek Singh. Now again, this is a regular example of how he morphs into a lost space. He morphs into an abandoned space, an abandoned territory. He becomes a territory by his nostalgia for the territory, by the nostalgia of the land. He talks about the territory all the time, so he keeps asking people what Toba Tek Singh is. In the process, he becomes known as Toba Tek Singh. He becomes a space, he becomes a story, he becomes a lost and abandoned space. So, again, you can see the way how the human body and the abundant space, or the abundant human body, he's abandoned by his family, the abundant human body and the abundant space morph into each other in a very symbolic, semantic way. So, okay, he did not know what day it was, what month it was, and how many years he had spent in the asylum. So his sense of calendar time, his sense of clock time had disappeared completely. Yet, and this is interesting, yet, as if by instinct, he knew when his relatives were going to visit. And on that day, he would take a long bath, scrub his body with soap, put oil in his hair, comb it, and put on clean clothes. So again, he seemed to have this proprioceptive instinct, the sixth sense, as it were, of when his relatives are going to come, to visit him. So he'd wake up early that day. I mean, he never sleeps, so he'd be running around, more active, more dynamic. He would take a bath, which is something he would not normally do. He would comb his hair, put on new clothes, and would look presentable for his relatives to come. But of course, we are told his relatives have stopped visiting him ever since the riots began, because it's unsafe to travel in the streets of Lahore as a Hindu, because Hindus are getting killed in Pakistan, Muslims are getting killed in India. It's just a big slaughterhouse across the two countries. That's the setting, and also that kind of violence on the streets is obviously interrupting the daily activities in life, the normal experiences. The definition of normal has changed dramatically. If his relatives asked him anything, he would keep silent or burst out with, again, the same nonsensical, seemingly nonsensical line. Upar de Gurgur, the annex, the Baya, Dhyana, the Mung, the Dal of the Lal time. So again, the gods up above have no concern for the fall of quality of the Dal. The Dal has fallen in quality, is deteriorated in quality, but the gods up above have no concern for the same. When he had been brought to the asylum, he had left behind an infant daughter. She was now a comely and striking young girl of 15. So again, she becomes the embodiment of the time that he has lost, in the sense that she was a child when he was brought, and now she's become almost a lady of 15. Who Bishan Singh failed to recognize, should come visit him and not be able to hold back her tears. So she becomes example of the time that he has left behind. She becomes example of the past that he cannot connect back to. So she is not recognized by Bishan Singh. She's unrecognizable by Bishan Singh. That becomes, again, very symbolic at a cognitive level. When the India-Pakistan caboodle started, Bishan Singh often asked the other inmates where Toba Tek Singh was. That's his primary concern, where Toba Tek Singh is. I mean, he's not really bothered about what India is or Pakistan is, because the whole idea of the nation doesn't appeal to him. And that's something which is quite symbolic in the story. The nation is a very modern concept, which is lost on most people at that point of time, because they were more concerned about the village, about the little place they came from, the town, the village, which had a name, but people knew each other. A nation as this big block of anonymity was something which they never connected to, or never could connect to, at a cognitive or even political or existential level. Right? So they were more concerned about the village, the town, the place of birth, the pond, the bazaar. So all these local markers are more important to them, because the local markers were basically what informed their identity, in the sense that they recognize a place and they recognize the people around them, and that's how they form their identity. So anything that takes away that identity was a crisis to them at a political, cognitive level. Okay, so he would ask everyone what Toba Tek Singh was, but obviously no one could tell them, because no one quite knew which place is going where. And Toba Tek Singh is an insignificant space. It's not like Lahore or Sialkot or Amritsar or Delhi. So it's not like a big city which should be classified and reclassified during nation formation. Toba Tek is just a small village. So the disappearance of Toba Tek Singh, or the abandon of Toba Tek Singh, is a collateral damage in the bigger project of nation formation. And again, the whole idea over here is how things get left behind, things get abandoned, how people get abandoned, how spaces get abandoned in this grand narrative of nation formation. So among other things, the story Memento is also a very compelling critique of the grand narrative of nation formation, which completely takes away the agency of the villager, the town people, the small person from a small place who doesn't quite know, who's cognitively confused, who's existentially confused, and obviously who's politically confused because of this crisis, because of this grand narrative formation. So now even the visitors have stopped coming because of the riots, we are told. Previously, his sixth sense would tell him when the visitors were due to come, but not anymore. His inner voice seemed to have stilled. He missed his family, the gifts they used to bring, and the concern with which they used to speak to him. He was sure that they would have told him whether Toba Tek Singh was in India or Pakistan. He also had a feeling that they came from Toba Tek Singh's old home. So again, they were remnants to him of his old home, Toba Tek Singh. So, and he thought that was a sort of a utopia to him. It was, interestingly, it's a utopia in a different sense, because normally utopia is something you look forward to. But this is a utopia you look back to. It's a very nostalgic kind of a space, which is perfect to him, this nostalgic, perfect landscape of, abundance, fertility, where no questions are asked, everything was perfect, etc. So it's a flawless past, it's a flawless frame of time and space, which is Toba Tek Singh. It's a bit like the concept that it will be useful to understand this would be Chronotope, C-H-R-O-N-O, Chronotope, T-O-P-E, one word, Chronotope, C-H-R-O-N-O-T-O-P-E. Chronotope was a term used by Mikhail Bakhtin, the Russian philosopher, and that essentially means a capsule of space and time, a compound of space and time. And it's a very handy term in memory studies. So, for instance, I have an article on this Toba Tek Singh from a perspective of memory studies, which I'm happy to upload in the forum. Now, the article argues that how Toba Tek Singh is a chronotope. The space becomes a chronotope for him. It's a reminder of a particular space and time put together. Right? And that is something he wants to relate to. That is something he wants to connect to all the time. Anything else around him, any space around him, any new territory, any new territorialization around him becomes completely meaningless to him. So in that sense, it becomes a useful category, theoretical category to look at. Okay, so he had a feeling that they came from Toba Tek Singh. So whoever he saw who came to meet him, in his mind, they all came from Toba Tek Singh. That's the only place of origin, that's the only place of solace for him. One of the lunatics had declared himself God. Again, look at the irrationality of this is also a compelling commentary on the irrationality of power positions and the irrationality of appropriations of power in the world outside. So someone suddenly decides that he is God in the asylum. One day, Bishan Singh asked him where Toba Tek Singh was. As was his habit, the man greeted Bishan Singh's question with a loud laugh and then said, "It's neither in India nor in Pakistan. In fact, it's nowhere, because till now I have not taken any decision about its location." Now, this is very, very loaded, as you can see, as you can guess. This is one madman talking to another madman, a quote-unquote madman. So one madman goes to another madman and says, and asks him, "Do you know where my village is?" And the other madman, who declares himself to be God, gives a loud laugh and says, "Well, it's neither in India nor in Pakistan, because I have not decided where it will go yet," which is a response that he would get if he were to go to any political headquarters or to go to any political powerhouse. They would tell him the same thing, that we have not decided, we haven't filed it as such. So we can see over here the equation between irrationality and bureaucracy, between madness and bureaucracy, which is a very complicated and complex and very disturbing kind of alliance that we see. So the madman's voices in the asylum, they come perilously close to the voices and responses that people would have got if they were to go to any bureaucratic headquarters, any power headquarters. So the relationship between the rational, or the boundary between the rational and the irrational, blurs away in Toba Tek Singh in very complicated ways. Okay, so Bishan Singh begged the man who called himself God to pass the necessary orders and solve the problem. So again, you can perfectly picture this happening in a real, quote-unquote, real, rational political space. So Bishan Singh goes to a political headquarter, to a bureaucratic headquarter, and begs them to basically give an order to classify Toba Tek Singh as an Indian land or a Pakistan land, depending on the choice. But God seemed to be very busy at other matters. At last, Bishan Singh's patience ran out, and he cried out, "Upar de Guru the annex, the Mung ki dal of Guruji the Khalsa and Guruji the Fateh o Bole, so Nihal se Sari Akal." Again, this is nonsensical, but he wants to say, we're told, what he wanted to say was, "You don't answer my prayers because you are a Muslim God. Had you been a Sikh God, you would have surely helped me out." So again, this sounds irrational, this sounds almost funnily mad, but then this also has a lot of resonance in the political scene, because every god has a religion now, every god is classified, even gods are classified in partitions. So there's a Muslim god, there's a Muslim powerhouse, and there's a Hindu god, there's a Hindu powerhouse, and for a person from another community or another religion to go and seek any help from the other quarter would just be rejected and abandoned. That's what Toba Tek Singh is saying. That's what Bishan Singh is saying over here. And again, these voices, these sentences, these expressions, they are very, very meaningful given the context, given the situation that the partition is. The partition had generated, the violence the partition had generated. Because a large part of the violence in partition, as we know, is not just about physical or bodily or corporeal violence, which was there. People were slaughtered, women were mutilated, children were killed. It was just one of the most gruesome episodes in human history. But also, at a more cognitive level, it was also violence which was out of epistemic violence, at a level of knowledge. Right? So your sense of reality, your knowledge of reality, your navigation with reality changes completely or is interrupted constantly. So today you know somewhere to be somewhere, something to be somewhere. Tomorrow you're told it's not there, it's something else. It's been reclassified. It has a new name. It belongs to a new nation. And of course, all these constant reconfigurations of reality, the re-territorialization of reality, it almost impacts you at a cognitive level. So madness in Toba Tek Singh may be seen as a fallout of this constant cognitive negotiations with reality, this constant cognitive negotiations with re-territorialized reality. So reality is constantly being re-territorialized, re-navigated, reconfigured, rebooted all the time. And that constant negotiation with the rebooting reality is what makes you mad all the time. So you don't quite know what is what. So there's this Muslim reality, there's this Hindu reality, there's a Sikh reality, there's a Christian reality. So all realities become broken and fractured and partitioned. So among other things, the partition over here is also an epistemic partition, a partition level of knowledge. The knowledge narratives begin to get partitioned, begin to get ruptured with violence. The violence over here becomes very real, cognitive, epistemic violence. And this is something which we keep seeing in Toba Tek Singh. Okay, so this is the response that it says, it gives to the Muslim God. You don't answer my prayers because you're a Muslim God. Had it been a Sikh God, you'd have surely helped me out. So again, this reclassification of gods become interesting over here. A few days before the exchange was due to take place, a Muslim from Toba Tek Singh, who happened to be a friend of Bishan Singh, came to meet him. So again, look at the very sort of cool, sinister quality with which the information is given to us. A Muslim from Toba Tek Singh, who happened to be a friend of the Sikh Bishan Singh, came to meet him. Now, interestingly, we are told that he comes from Toba Tek Singh. Now, that is a place where his divisions did not matter at some point in time. Whether he was Sikh or a Muslim or a Hindu did not matter at that point in time because he came from Toba Tek Singh. But now it does matter. So it is important to be spelled out. It is important to spell it out that he was a Muslim from Toba Tek Singh who happens to be a friend of Bishan Singh. He had never visited him before. On seeing him, Bishan Singh tried to slink away, but the warder barred his way. "Don't you recognize your friend Fazal Din?" He said, "He's come to meet you." Bishan Singh looked furtively at Fazal Din and started to mumble something. Fazal Din placed his hand on Bishan Singh's shoulder. "I have been thinking of visiting you for a long time," I said, "but I couldn't get the time. Your family is well and has gone to India safely. I did what I could to help. As for your daughter, Roop Kaur, she hesitated. She is safe too in India." So the key thing over here is a hesitation over here, right? So he's reporting about the family to Bishan Singh, and obviously the report is very complicated. He says that your family is gone to India, they're safe, your daughter Roop Kaur, and they hesitates over here. And the hesitation obviously has a sinister quality. It has a very, very unsettling quality, and then he says she's safe too in India. Right? So we don't quite know what safe means over here. We don't quite know what she is safe in India too means over here. So there's a possibility that something really bad had happened to her. Maybe she was killed, maybe she was mutilated, maybe she was sexually attacked. We don't quite know what happened, and that never gets told. But the hesitation that is there before her report comes in obviously carries all kinds of possibilities that is told. So again, it's a good example of a short story which tells you things but not saying certain things. That's something which we saw already, and many of the short stories have done so far. Kathy Mansfield's Fly, for instance, Joyce's Araby, for instance, all are very important examples of how what does not get told, what does not get communicated, as actually what gets conveyed is what gets more important at a semantic level. So he comes and tells this to Bishan Singh and gives him a report about different things. Bishan Singh kept quiet. Fazal Din continued, "Your family wanted me to make sure you are well. Soon you'll be moving to India. Please give my salam to Bhai Balbir Singh and Bhai Raghbir Singh and Bahan Amrit Kaur. Tel Bilbid and the Fazaldin as well. Now it becomes a bit more clear because he's saying that, give my regards to your wife, to your brother, etc. But he doesn't mention his daughter. So the fact that his daughter disappeared from the address becomes a very potent, a very resonant thing. It just becomes more sinister, kind of an absence. So the absence of the daughter, and you can connect it back to the hesitation before the daughter's report was given to him. She too is well and safe in India. And that hesitation obviously has very complicated connotations. Tel Bilbid that Fazaldin is well. The 2 brown buffaloes left behind are well too. Both of them gave birth to calves, but unfortunately one of them died. Say that I think of them often and write to me if there is anything I can do. So I'll stop at this point today, but I'll just unpack this a little bit. Look at the quality of the message over here. It's very, very domestic, it's very, very small, it's very, very little, it's very, very micro, it's very, very mundane. And that is exactly what makes it so political. It's talking about buffaloes giving birth to calves. And amidst all the political turmoil, amidst all this political violence and the slaughterhouse which is happening around India and Pakistan, he comes to his friend of a different religious community and talks about how the buffaloes in the village had given calves. And that's exactly the kind of message, exactly the kind of report that one villager would give to another villager in a pre-partition time, in a pre-partition time of tranquility, of love, of peacefulness, of togetherness, of cohabitation, right? That becomes a thing of the past. So now this becomes completely insignificant because people want to know bigger things. There are bigger questions being asked because violence has erupted at such a level that buffaloes giving birth to calves becomes completely immaterial over here. So this comes back as an idyllic past and as an idyllic territory, point in time where buffaloes giving birth to calves was a news that had to be conveyed to a friend from a different community, from a different religion. So this little message that Manto describes in a foreground, so where Fazaldin, who's obviously a Muslim, comes and tells Bishan, saying who is sick, that remember the 2 brown buffaloes in their village, they've given birth to calves and they are left behind as well. And one of them died. So all this very mundane micro information becomes very, very important and very intimate in quality. And that's something which you find in Toba Tek Singh, that the first thing that goes away during partition, when all this epistemic violence is taking place, the first causality is intimacy. Intimacy goes away, trust goes away, simplicity of things goes away. And so we have a suspicion, grand narratives. Everyone wants to know bigger questions. Everyone wants to know where he's located. And trust, intimacy, all these different human elements which were there in the pre-partition time disappear completely from the cognitive radar. And so people keep asking about the dislocation, the alienation, and they get completely alienated from intimacy. So among the different kinds of alienation that partition generates, there's one big alienation from intimacy, from trust, from simplicity. And this particular message that Fazal then delivers to Toba Tek Singh is a remnant from the past where intimacy was still possible, where simplicity was possible, and it existed in a perfectly peaceful coexistence across communities between people who consider each other as brothers, which is something that he addresses Toba Tek Singh or Bishan Singh's family as. Give my regards to brother Balbir, give my regards to sister Amrit Kaur. So they're all like this lovely family-like relationship which is there in a pre-partition time. So we get a sense of what had really been partitioned. It was not about territory, it's not about land masses, it's not about geopolitical divisions, it's about human trust, it's about human relationships, it's about human bonds of love. Those are things which get partitioned. So this very human quality about this message is what makes it so political in quality. So I stop at this point today and I wind up with this story in the next lecture. Thank you for your attention.